I started in the summer of 1969, right after I turned 18. I started on the Marion division of the EL, and I went out and hired out in the dispatching office. The chief there was a guy by the name of Don Schoonemaker, who turned out to be my sister-in-law, my eventual sister-in-law's father-in-law. But I sporadically worked as an operator and agent until I graduated from University of Dayton in late '72, and then I started working as an extra train dispatcher in early 1973. I started out in a place on the Dayton branch called Maitland, and that's where the EL Dayton branch crossed the DT&I. I worked at Burt Tower. That's where the Erie and the New York Central joint double track between Marion and Galleon was, and also where the NYC line to Columbus crossed us. I worked at MD. That's Mansfield. That's where the B&O branch between Willard and Newark crossed the Erie. And then I worked at Sterling, which is where the B&O main crosses the Erie main west of Akron. I only posted one day at the big tower in Marion called AC. That was probably the busiest job, but I never worked at it. I just posted there one day. And I worked a couple agents' jobs. So I worked agent at a place called Richwood, which is on the Dayton branch, which is mostly grain business. And we had a job in the office at Marion called the monitor's job, where you monitored the message wire and sent out messages during the day. I worked that a little bit, but mostly I was in the tower. I guess at that age and in that thing, what made them great was here I am, an 18-year-old kid, and I had all this responsibility on your shoulders at a busy place. The less busy places, maybe not so much responsibility, but at a busy place, they were. I mean, to be honest, working as a train dispatcher, I'd rather not work with the towers. I'd rather work direct with, the TCS signaling, so you don't have to work through somebody. But when you're starting out, it made as I said, it's a great place to learn the railroad, and also a great place to see if you can accept the responsibility to do that. Excuse me, I retired from Norfolk Southern last day of February 2012. The last not quite 10 years, I was in their joint facilities department, and that's where I retired from. We had a small branch of it in Dearborn, Michigan. The job I retired from was really good. Probably the one I look back on the most fondest. I was the last night chief train dispatcher on the Erie at Marion, Ohio. I started working as chief there, night chief, in early 1975, and then I worked as night chief right up till the last day of the Erie before they went into Conrail. And the way we did things then, it was almost like you had your own, almost 400 miles of railroad to play with and make your own decisions and make sure the railroad kept running. And it was all on you at night. There was not too many other people around at night to help you. So at age of 23, when I was the night chief, I mean, it's again a lot of responsibility, and it was it was interesting to do that. And I learned a lot at the time. Actually, the last night I worked, the last day was Wednesday, March 31st. So I came off duty early that morning. It was still EL, and then it was my rest days, Wednesday and Thursday night. So it was EL when I left in the morning, and then when I came back Friday night, it was Conrail, and things had, of course, changed a lot because our office was right on top of the diesel shop at Marion, and fairly noisy place. But after the merger, the shop did not become part of Conrail. So there was no engines there. It was dead quiet. It was like the quietest I'd ever heard it. So that was a little bit of a change. I don't know that I was surprised. Where I was first surprised was right up to early '75. All we'd heard was the Erie EL was going to try to go on its own and not go into Conrail. So when I got the surprise was when they announced they couldn't go it on their own. That was probably the most surprising thing. And then it was just waiting for when that time would come. You know, we had hopes maybe somebody else would take us over. We wouldn't go into Conrail. Something would happen. They might come up with this Mark EL, but none of that came to pass. So it was just, I would say I was most surprised when they said they were going to go into Conrail. So I think it was more not knowing. I mean, basically everybody that wanted to have a job after Conrail still had a job. We still had a job dispatching. The train and engine crews had to leave, and the shop people had to leave, but they got jobs. Probably what they didn't want to leave was the Marion community, because that's where most of them had spent all their lives, and they were from that area. I wasn't originally from that area, so to leave there was no big deal for me. It was the worst was the EL was more like a family, so it was kind of hard leaving that. I would say was the worst part about it. But other than that, I always got taken care of pretty well, I thought, so I don't have any regrets or anything. Yeah, I wish it had stayed around, the EL had stayed around, but, it wasn't to be. Our track wasn't too bad. Where it was really worse was Marion Yard. We tried to do, the Erie had closed a yard in Hammond, Indiana, and then they tried to do all their switching for the westbound connections at Marion. And Marion had a lot of things going against it. Number one, it was built on a swamp. Number two, it didn't have enough classification tracks. And number three, they were going to fix it up, and then Hurricane Agnes took a lot of the material away they were going to use to fix up Marion Yard. So it had averaged a couple derailments a day, and that was probably where it was worst, was Marion Yard. The rest of it, the main line was in pretty good shape, I thought. We'd cut the speeds down and stuff like that, and there were some slow orders, but it wasn't too bad. You could still run the railroad. And you got to remember, we didn't, on the Erie, at least in that part of the country, we didn't have all the branches that Penn Central did. We basically had the Maine and the Dayton branch. And they were passable. You could get by. It's like I've told people this before, and I remember I wrote to the editor of Railway Age about a year or so ago, and he picked up on this phrase. Back then, with the way track conditions were, it was an adventure to run a grain train because you never knew when it was going to rock off and derail. And Conrail put so much money and fixed the track up, and you could operate a railroad. You didn't have to worry about having a derailment like we did before. So it was a lot better. The track conditions were a lot better. We got a lot of business back, and we were doing great at the end. I thought that was another surprise when Conrail announced it was going into a merger. That was a big surprise to me. So, Conrail saved railroading. There was a lot of stuff that got cut out and everything, but all in all, they were a success.